pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning and welcome to the September 4th County Commission meeting. I remind you to silence your cell phones. The meeting documents are on the end of the counter in the white folder. And if you need a listening device, Craig is in the front and he can help you with that. Routine business. Item number 1 is consider a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 2 is approve the minutes, commission meeting minutes from August 28th, 2018.
So move.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 3 is bills to be paid in the amount of $1,334,015.
Pay the bills.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 4 is reports. There are none. Item number 5 is personnel actions. Item A is consider a motion to approve the routine personnel action.
So moved.
A motion, is there
Second.
a motion and a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item B is recognize significant employee anniversaries for September 2018. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning, Carrie Deaver from Human Resources. I have a relatively short list for you today. Celebrating anniversaries, we have Stacy Acker at Safe Home, celebrating 5 years. David Heinold from Planning, celebrating 5 years. James Zangaroth at the Sheriff's Office, celebrating 10. Colleen Albrecht at the State's Attorney's Office, celebrating 10. And Dan Friedbauer, who's been a part-time correctional worker for us for 20 years, is also celebrating an anniversary.
And I don't think anybody's here today, are they?
Oh,
There, we got one.
Oh,
Thank you.
well, congratulations, 20 years for us.
Yep.
And all in a part-time role, correct? That's fantastic.
And thank you.
Thank you.
kidding.
Thank you for coming over, Jamie. Thanks for bringing him. Okay, item number C is record volunteers in the county departments for August 2018.
That's the last item we have for you this morning. It's 261 for the month in 6 different departments of county.
Always greatly appreciated by the county.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Item number 6 is abatements recommended for approval. There are none. Item number 7 is notices and requests. There are none. Item number 8 is planning and zoning notices. First reading and authorize the auditor to publish notice for rezoning number 18-04. Good morning, Scott.
Thank you, Scott Anderson, Planning Director. This morning I'm asking I'm requesting that you authorize the auditor to publish a hearing notice for a rezoning that will take place on September 25th of 2018 at the Carnegie Town Meeting Hall at the city. This is a joint meeting between the City of Sioux Falls and the County Commission. The applicant is requesting to rezone approximately 3.21 acres from A1 agriculture to the Emerald Pines Plan Development Request. The property is located at 7701 West Maple Street, which is approximately a mile west of the city limits on Maple Street. The Planning Commission heard this item at their July 23rd Planning Commission meeting. It was a joint meeting, and both planning commissions recommended approval of the rezoning request. I can show you generally where it's located. This is Maple Street. To the southwest, you can see the village of Ellis and the residential homes that are located there. The applicant is requesting to rezone this to a planned development for the purposes of eventually building a what I would call an event center, wedding barn, hosting facility, and he'll have his own personal office in there as well. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Right now it's undeveloped. So there's nothing out there except a pasture.
Madam Chair, I'm going to have to recuse myself. I'm
Okay.
going to be voting on this one, so.
Okay. Any other questions for Scott? Commissioner?
Just a quick question, Scott. There was no neighborhood opposition.
There was no one that appeared at the Planning Commission either in favor or opposed to it.
Thank you.
This is a first reading and authorized publication. If there's no more questions, I'd look for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes
Thank you.
unanimously. Thanks, Scott. Item number 9 is petition for compromise of lien. There are none. And then we have opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to speak about something that is not on today's agenda? Please moving. Regular business, item number 10 is a public hearing for a special events on sale liquor license for Prairie Pasta Incorporated. Olivia.
Yes, Prairie Pasta Incorporated, also known as Johnny Carino's, will be providing liquor at a wedding on September 8th, 2018, assuming your approval at the Riviera Event Center. And I have received no concerns, complaints, or objections from State's Attorney, Planning and Zoning, or the Sheriff's Department.
Any questions for Olivia? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition to this liquor license? Anyone who would like to speak in favor? Okay, look for a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. A roll call vote, please.
Yes. Bender,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Barth,
Aye.
Karski,
Yes.
Hiberger.
Aye, motion passes. Oops, did you want to abstain on that one, Commissioner? Or that was the last? That was the last one. Sorry. All those in favor, motion passes unanimously. Going back, I apologize. On item number 8, I said passed unanimously. It'd be a vote of 4 with 1 abstention. Excuse me. Thank you.
Sorry.
Item number 11 is public hearing to consider a motion to declare public legal, properly legally described. Kevin, I'm going to let you do all those because there's a whole bunch of them, but it's a public nuisance public hearing. And so I'll let you read off the numbers.
All right, so the property description is the east 245 feet, the south 210 feet, of the southeast quarter, except H1, H2, and H3 in Burke Township, section 10, 10450. This item was a deferred item, the action from the July 24th meeting. The item for a public hearing, or public nuisance, was heard 2 times prior to this, and also July 19th. Staff, at that time, the county commission decided to give the landowner a little bit more time because he has been working on it to complete the cleanup of the property. Staff visited the property on August 29th, which would have been last Wednesday, and staff noticed that the progress that was made was still remained, like there wasn't any new items necessarily brought onto the property. However, there were still many unlicensed and expired vehicles on the property, approximately 14 of them from my count. And then there's also still concerns about other items on the property, such as what lies behind the fence, as there could be hazardous materials or other vehicles behind the fence that are unknown. I have some photos to show you. So this would be the location of the property. It's approximately 1.5 miles west of the Del Rapids exit off Interstate 29. There's an aerial photo of the site. And this is a couple of photos here initially of the initial site visit that I made back in March of 2017. And you'll see the many vehicles and some stuff being piled up against the building in those 2 photos. This would be a couple of photos of the site prior to the first public hearing for this public nuisance item. And you'll see that the landowner has constructed a fence in the background since the initial complaint. So that obstructs the view of much of the property, but many vehicles still remain. And then I had our building inspector take a photo kind of midway between the last meeting and this meeting to see if there's any progress made. So there's a few photos of the property there. And then the final set of photos is from my most recent visit on August 29th. And you see that the these group of vehicles here are mostly unlicensed, or at least visibly unlicensed. The boat is licensed in that photo. And you'll see the commercial-sized vehicles, the 2 white vehicles on this photo, and also other unlicensed vehicles. You can see a little bit in the distance there. It appears like everything is either off the right-of-way or very close to it. The pickup that's in the right-of-way is actually my pickup because there wasn't any other place to park it. So you'll see if you kind of go straight back down the middle of the photo, you'll see the cornfield in the background that shows roughly the property line. But he has moved and maintained stuff out of the right-of-way since we visited. This is a little bit of close-up of a few items in the back of the house, back along the fence. You'll see a barrel there and a stack of shingles. And then there's a photo of the fence, and that's what I have of the property for today. So is there any questions about the progress that has been made?
Any questions? Commissioner Karski?
2 questions, I guess. How does this come before us? I mean, I know in the city level, a lot of times it's done by a complaint of somebody else. Is this from a complaint, or is this from you or your staff driving around?
Yes, this initiated from a complaint.
Okay.
I can't even recall who was the original complainer.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter. But yeah, it was an initial phone call complaint.
Okay. And if you could, the fence, I'm just curious, that looks like a series of garage doors that were put
I
up?
believe so.
Okay.
Any other questions for Kevin at this point? Commissioner Barth?
Kevin, the first photo, which you have, the aerial one, that's from 2017, right?
Yes.
Do we have a drone or anything that could take a new photo? Because I'm just guessing it looks different today, but,
Me, sir, you'll have to wait till we call you to the podium, and then we can talk.
So this would have been the spring of 2017, and no, we don't really have a drone that we could do this with.
thank you.
Does Highway have a drone? No? Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for Kevin? Okay, this is a public hearing, so at this point, if you would like to come to the podium, identify yourself again, and then you could address any comments that you would like to.
I'm the owner of the property. All the pictures that I seen there were
You have to,
old pictures.
you have to give your name for the
Oh, Ron
record.
Hagee. Ron
Sorry.
Hagee.
And your address, Ron.
46998 246th Street.
Thank you. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, yeah, all them pictures are not up to date, so it looks a lot better than that.
Okay, we're down, we've got pictures from 8/29. Do you wanna,
Yeah, those are, that's what we postponed it for me to finish, continue cleaning it, so.
Commissioner Bender?
So our staff was out the middle of last week
Yeah,
on
it still looks-
August 29th, and that's when these pictures are taken.
It looks totally different right now.
Did you bring any pictures with you so
No,
we
I
could
didn't.
see what it looks like?
Nope.
Is there anyone that wants to speak against this property? I don't think there's anyone here.
This is like the 4th hearing we've had.
Yep.
Over it. And all the neighbors, there's only one person complaining about it, and that's more of a grudge thing than anything, I think. And you know, it's all the neighbors up the road, they were here on the first hearing, stated that it was no nuisance to them at all. There isn't no unlicensed vehicles on there now, so.
The problem is it doesn't meet the code according to the pictures, and so that's why we're here for the 4th time, so.
I should still have the grandfather rights anyhow, as far as that, my thoughts on it, but.
Correctly, you'd been offered an opportunity to apply for a conditional use permit.
Yes, I haven't had time to really check into that yet. I've been busy.
I guess, Ron, when we met the last time, we gave you kind of a time frame, and that time frame is
Yeah, all
now.
of the vehicles are licensed and the yard's cleaned up, so.
So you had those licensed as of the 29th, since the 29th?
There's one that's not licensed, there's one in the driveway, and that's out because I'm waiting for a title on it.
But the rest of them are
Or
licensed?
yes. Or not there.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Barrett?
You know, civilization is moving into our area, and some of
Yeah.
these things which, you know, were in existence for periods of time are no longer the standard that people are living by. That said, I understand your efforts there to clean it up, but you look at, you know, that fence, et cetera, I wouldn't want to have that fence in my backyard.
Everybody seems to think that it looks fine that I've talked to.
Well,
I guess, you know, what you guys ought to do is, or Kevin here, is go talk to the neighbors. They're the ones that should matter, actually.
well, they certainly do matter, but there's, you know, 180,000 people in the county here, and
Yeah,
they also matter.
yeah, and I've been on that corner since my grandpa's been on that corner since 1943.
You're not driving the same car he was driving either.
Close to it.
These are never easy decisions for us because we don't like to enforce, I don't want to say it
Bully
that way.
people.
We don't want to overdo property rights. These are property rights, but there are codes in the county
Yeah.
that have to be enforced, and when they're brought to our attention, or if we are aware of them, it's our responsibility as elected officials to move forward with what the law says, and it's been out there.
Well, I think the complaint originally started with just the blocking the view of the corner, didn't it?
But none of it was in compliance at that point, and so that's an issue. So when we
Yeah.
get complaints, we have to enforce the whole code.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Barth?
So do you feel like you could continue to make improvements on
Oh,
this?
and I will, yeah.
Okay, I'd love to see an empty front yard and an aerial photograph that looked like a golf course, but I really don't expect that. But, you know, the cars parked out front on the corner, et cetera, it's a bit of an eyesore there, you know?
Yeah.
Civilization is,
I've been hearing it from her too.
Gursky?
I'm not ready to take any action on this, but at the same time, I don't want to see it come back to us. I mean, you don't want to come back, I'm sure, Ron.
No, definitely not.
To me, it more comes down to a question of proper use of the land according to our zoning, and I understand that this has been going on here for
Well, to be honest with you.
70-some years.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think the guy that made the original complaint will come up with something else.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, and then we'll send our staff out and decide
Okay.
if that complaint is justified to
yeah,
to
right on.
bring before us, if it's in violation of our codes. And if it gets to that point, I'm sure we'll see you here again, and I don't, you know,
Yeah,
it's a waste of your time and our time to keep doing this.
yeah.
But at the same time, it is your land, and I respect that right as a property owner. My concern, again, goes back to more, is this a proper use of the property, and are we complying with what we're
Well,
supposed to be doing?
Well, the picture that was just there, those three vehicles aren't even there anymore, right there. They're gone.
Commissioner Bender?
Well, I mean, I think it's a similar sentiment that what you're hearing here. I mean, the reason you've been here for four
I know.
times is because you haven't taken responsibility to handle this in a timely
Oh, you-
manner. And so our staff has had to come out, and
Yeah.
we've had to expend taxpayer dollars to address this issue. So I don't hear you taking a lot of responsibility for this morning. I
I'm
too
taking all
believe
the
in property
responsibility.
rights, but I believe in the property rights of all the folks that
Yeah.
live in the county equally. And this is not an issue about one person complaining, it's an issue about complying with code. And unfortunately, you know, the proof that we have
Well,
is what we've,
Ron, let her finish her statement, please.
Okay, yeah.
is what we see here. You didn't bring anything, you know, other than your word, which, you know, I respect, but I don't you've been here for 4 times because it hasn't been cleaned up, so I don't know, you know, I can't necessarily opine as to what it looks like today. But if you don't want to come back, then that is really 100% within your control. And so I would prefer not to take action today either, but I also am not completely optimistic that you're really going to do what you say you're going to do.
I will.
Is there any possibility that we could have staff look at this? I'm looking at, I don't know, Scott or Kevin, with the condition that if the stuff isn't cleaned up outside the fence, oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. We have, this is a public hearing, so I have somebody that wants to speak in opposition to it. I still have a comment to make before a motion, but you'll have to sit down, Mr. Ron, and we'll let this other gentleman speak. You have to give your name and your address and address the commission.
Good morning. My name's Josh Anhalt, 46999 246th Street. I am a neighbor, drive past every day. So I guess if you have, I've been listening in and I've been hearing what's been said. So if you have any questions or anything you want to hear from me.
Are you in support of it or in opposition to it?
I would say neither. I'm pretty neutral. Really, it hasn't been a problem for me. Like one of my other neighbors said, I wouldn't really call it a nuisance. But at the same time, I don't know if he's been 100% truthful. I mean, all those vehicles, in my eyes, are still there. Are they hurting anything? Not necessarily.
Okay. Commissioner Bennigan.
Josh, what you said you drove by them, you drive by them every day. When
Yep.
you drove by them this morning, were those vehicles in the same location as the pictures?
I didn't pay attention this morning, I guess. But I know within the last couple days, a lot of those vehicles are there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Barth?
I'd like to ask Kevin a question.
Kevin?
Kevin, if we were to declare this a nuisance, what would be the process and the cost to the property owner for our cleanup?
So the first thing would be is that staff needs to find a contractor to clean it up. So if you're declared a public nuisance, it could be a few weeks before we can even get out to the property. So he would have a little bit of time that he could finish cleaning up the property and take off what he needs to before we can even arrive. Then the cost would be, for most vehicles, we haven't incurred much cost to the county because what happens is the tow company would then take the vehicle, put it in impound, and if the property owner retrieves the vehicle, they'll have to pay the impound fees and all that sort of thing. Or if they don't, then the impound will just keep the car and salvage title the car or the vehicle. So depending on the size of the vehicle, we may get a charge for that for tow fee, we may not, but that would be part of the process.
And those fees are assessed back to the property owner. They are not incurred by taxpayers.
Correct.
By the rest of the taxpayers. So what I started to say was, if we declared it a public nuisance, there is a time lag in there, and could we declare it a public nuisance at this point for the outside of the fence, not knowing what's behind the fence at this point, and then it would still be probably a month before there was cleanup, and if it was all cleaned up within the month, then it would just go away. So it would still actually give him another month to move everything that's in non-compliance. And if it isn't moved in a month, it wouldn't come back to us because it would be taken care of.
Correct. If you recall, last summer we did a public nuisance on a property south of Hartford that had a bunch of air conditioning units in front of the property. We actually never got there.
Okay.
Because the family came and picked up all those air conditioning units and removed them from the property after we declared it a public nuisance.
If I may. And in that case, there were something like 150 window air conditioners piled in the front yard of a house.
Correct.
You know, I guess, again, as I said, civilization does change our standard. I mean, we're no longer living in sod huts, and this property looks to be a ruin. Not that it can't be improved, but I'd like to see more dramatic change. If we don't take action, pretty soon it'll be winter, and I don't think we're going out there with 3 feet of snow and 40-mile-an-hour winds and trying to pick this stuff up. But at the same time, I would like to give the property owner an extra push here.
Commissioner Karski?
I'm going to be voting in opposition to any action on this, and with the thought that it really doesn't, most of the neighbors that we've heard it from at least 2 of them that live very close to this, and they're pretty much empathetic. They don't really see it as an issue or a problem. Granted, one neighbor does, and if Mr. Heggie doesn't take care of this property, it will come back before us again, and we will see it again. It might be next year, but it's going to be up to him to control, as Commissioner Bender said, what happens in the future on this. I'm going to take him at his word, and the fact that those neighbors that are close don't seem to care either way what's going on at this point, because it's not bad enough. Maybe if it gets worse, they will. But it's going to be up to him to take care of that property and make sure that it doesn't come back before us.
Problem is, we've been doing this for months, and there's been no action, or minimal action.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Barth?
sitting up here, our decisions aren't always easy. And certainly, we don't like to mess with people's lives. But I think, you know, if you're an umpire, you call it a ball or you call it a strike. And I'm going to make a motion to declare this property to be a public nuisance and enact SDCL 21-10-6. I don't know if there's another dash and thing in there, but it doesn't show on my agenda. So I'll make a motion to declare this a nuisance.
Can I ask for clarification, and that would be, are we talking the whole property or just outside the fence at this point?
I would say outside the fence.
Okay. So I have a motion to declare public nuisance at South Dakota Codified Law 21-10-6 on the property just outside the fence at this point. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll make a second with a comment.
Okay, I have a second with a comment. Commissioner Bender?
I think because Mr. Heggie has acknowledged that there is one unlicensed vehicle out there, he's had well over a month to get all of them licensed, and because it appears from passerbys that the cars haven't moved, possibly contrary to what Mr. Heggie said, and the fact that he would have a whole month to probably get it cleaned up on his own, if that's what he chooses to do, I think I will support declaring this a public nuisance.
Commissioner Bendigo?
Well, frankly, I thought the last time we had this conversation that we would have progress made, and a lot of progress, because there was indication that there was going to be some action taken by the owner. Unfortunately, this could go on forever, so in Jeff's analogy, 3 strikes and you're out with the umpires. I think we've given him enough time to get this taken care of on his own. I hope now that if we do declare this a public nuisance, that the deadline is in the sand, so to speak, and there won't be any more conversations about whether we can move ahead or we can't move ahead. I don't like doing that, but frankly, I think it's a waste of our taxpayers' dollars and time to have to do it 4 times. So I'm going to support the public nuisance.
I don't think any of us are happy about this, because none of us want to push this type of issue. Not, but we still have to follow the code, and so this is brought to our attention, and we have to, Ron, if you want to talk, you have to come to the podium. I'm hoping that this gets cleaned up in the next month so that we don't have to deal with it, because none of us want to. We obviously are going to have to deal with inside the fence at a later date, because we're not dealing with that now. I would strongly encourage you to look or to talk to them about changing the zoning of that area so that we can just be done with this. I think at this point, it's probably too late to get it done in a month. Unless the process is well underway, you'd have to talk to Kevin about that. Because that was one of our other suggestions, is get this rezoned. So, any other comments, Commissioner Barth?
Thank you, Commissioner Heiberger. You said it exactly right. We don't want to do this, but knowing that it'll take some time before this actually happens, it gives us an opportunity, gives Mr. Heggie the opportunity to get this cleaned up, and I hope we take advantage of it. I know that many times these nuisance things reoccur after they've been cleaned up once. It seems like, you know, just like on TV where they've got that show Hoarders, people start piling up cars and snowmobiles and motorcycles, lawnmowers, etc. Let's not let that happen. Let's get this cleaned up and let's make it look great.
Mr. Hagee, if you have any final comments, otherwise we are going to have a vote.
Go ahead.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Barth,
Aye.
Bender,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Karski,
No.
Heiberger.
Aye. Motion passes 4-1. You got probably a month to 6 weeks to get it cleaned up. You could bring pictures to Kevin too. Okay, great. All right, we'll move on to item number 12, a motion to accept findings of the Minnehaha County Surplus Property Appraisal Board report.
Good morning, Commission. Bob Litz from the Auditor's Office, and once again, we're at a point where we're going to do the tax deed sale, and to that end, earlier you'd approved 3 former workers for the county to go out and be your appraisal board, and they've brought back their final report. And so what I'm requesting today is, number one, that a motion that the commission accept the findings of the Minnehaha County Surplus Property Appraisal Board report.
Let's
Number
just
two,
let's just do one at a time.
one at a time, okay?
So item A is the motion to accept the findings. Are there any questions? Maybe we should talk about the findings first?
Well, the findings are, is that the board went out and on the property that's north of Colton, it's a rather significant property, and they came back with a board appraisal value of $150,000. There was a house moved on there with no moving permit, no construction permit. There was a breezeway that was being constructed between the two. We took the property last year. It was getting late in the season, and due to some concerns that you expressed to me, you felt the same way, that you didn't necessarily want to move these people off that property because with winter setting in, but they've had a year to do it. And there's been a response and some stutter steps that the person who owns the property had promised to come in and pay that before the end of this month, and that has not happened to the best of my knowledge. Now, I've not checked with the treasurer's office this morning, but I've not heard anything from them either. You know, there's a lot of personal property on there, and that may be another issue as we go forward. I'm not certain how that's going to work, but I'd like to put this property on the sale and move forward with it. The other piece of property is a small partial lot. It's about a third of a city lot in Del Rapids, and I'm thinking that the total lot would be 60 foot wide, but this one here is much smaller than that. And the value of that came in under $500. So you don't necessarily have to put it up to auction. We could either negotiate with one of the neighbors to try to pay some of these taxes on it and accept that lot, or the city of Del Rapids is always interested in these lots, or they're frequently interested in these lots as well. So that one there, the smaller one, might not necessarily wind up on the sale as I contact adjoining neighbors and the municipality out in Del Rapids.
Any questions for Bob? Commissioner Barth?
Bob, It could not get close to the building to determine if the two houses were joined together? Did they have like a junkyard dog out there? or-
Well, I've not talked with Kyle this morning, but I know they have a gate, and a lot of times that gate is latched. And if you want to jump over the fence, that's another matter. But
Maybe you need younger people on the appraisal board.
well, what the situation is, Commissioner, is that they had a flag up there, "Don't tread on me, snake." And then it also adjoined some state property, and those signs that said this is state property were physically twisted around and bent down, indicating that things might not go smoothly. And so when they went up there last year, the three board members felt like they were under surveillance, but there was nobody up there. And so they made the report and got out of there and brought some pictures back. So these folks know what's going on up there. The property was also transferred from the mom and dad to the son, and he's also been unable to meet the obligations of the back taxes. And so we also did a process for the beginning of an eviction, and this was before all this here. And then, of course, the person promised to pay for the end of this month here, and that has not happened. But the county's standing in the matter has not been hurt. We still took deed on the place. They've been there for a while, but it's time to move forward on this property.
Commissioner Barth?
So how many people do you think are living there? Is it
We're
one
uncertain.
family, two families?
It's uncertain. At this point, the title is in the name of the son, and I don't know how many people
If I
are
may,
there.
how many years of unpaid taxes does this represent?
This would be 4 years going on 5, so. And, I would, just from the photographs that we had last year, there were a lot of flowers and things on the front porch, hanging plants and stuff, and generally guys don't do that, so I think that there may be somebody else living there.
Are there still flowers there, or is it
I haven't
headstones?
seen any pictures yet, so.
Okay.
Item A is a motion to accept the findings of the Minnehaha County Surplus Appraisal Board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item B is motion to declare RDID 63172 as surplus property for auction, not the second one that's on your listing there, just the first one.
I'm confused, Commissioner. Did you just read
Motion to
the?
declare RDI 63172 as surplus property for public auction. And that's a roll call vote. Is there a motion
So it's the
or
same
question?
property here. We're just looking at auctioning it?
Yes. Do we have a motion? Do we have a
Yes.
second?
Second.
Second.
Can I
All
ask
those
for a
in-
point of clarification?
Yes.
So are we gonna do both properties? We're just doing them as two separate motions, or I'm confused?
Olivia, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the appraisal board's suggestion is that we sell the 63172 at auction, but we give to the adjacent landowner or transfer the other property, which is why we're only taking action on the first one right now. We have a few more motions later that will.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So I have a motion, and a second on the public auction. We need a roll call vote.
Yes. Karski,
Yes.
Benega,
No.
Bender,
Yes.
Barth,
Aye.
Hiberger.
Yes. Motion passes 4-1. Next, we move on to a motion to authorize the auditor to proceed with negotiations to transfer RDI number 63567 to the adjacent landowner.
So move.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor, do we need a roll call on that one, Olivia? I would do. Okay, I'll do a roll call on that one too, the transfer.
All right, so Bender,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Barth, Hiberger.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Item D is a motion to approve recommended minimum bid amounts for RDI number 63172. And is there gonna be a minimum bid? There will not be a minimum bid on the 6.3 because that was recommended to give to the adjacent landowner by the appraisal board. So I just need it for the RDI number 63172, and I think we'll do a roll call vote again, just to be safe.
Clarification?
Yep.
So the minimum bid is 15,000, which is the back taxes that are
No.
due.
I think 150,000 since that's the board's evaluation. No? Okay, we'll find out.
Madam Chair, if I may, you know, we've had properties that have appraised for more than we were able to get for them at the sale. Notably, last year, we had a property that was over on Fair Hall that was appraised higher than we could get. So, you know, is this gonna lock me into taking, keeping this property if I don't get the $150,000?
I would tell you there was a property that sold this weekend, northwest of Sioux Falls, or northwest of Colton. I don't know exact, like 3 miles from Colton. 10 acres and a house for $185,000, and it was sold within minutes of hitting the market.
Well,
So just telling you that they're out there and they're going fast.
Well, we'll certainly try to ramp that up, but my question is if it does not do that, am I locked in at the $150,000, and should I hold it over until the next year?
We have a comment from Olivia.
So the minimum bid for the property in question is $15,065.77, according to the notice of sale that you may or may not choose to authorize in the next motion. That's determined by the back taxes plus a $200 fee for the county's costs to make this all happen. So whereas the value listed by the appraisal board is $150,000, that's just to give us an idea of the value of the property. If you approve the minimum bid, that would just mean that we couldn't go below that $15,000.
So it is the 15,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
I stand corrected. Commissioner Benega, excuse me.
I guess I have a process question. If in fact someone's interested in that property and we have not been able to access it because we've been having concerns about safety and all that kind of stuff, how is someone who's interested in that property gonna be able to, frankly, inspect or look at?
Well, Commissioner, that is why I would like to have these people off the property and finish the eviction process with the deputies.
How long does that take?
Shouldn't take very long at all. I defer to the state's attorney. We've taken action on this. They've been served notice,
Okay.
notice to quit, and so, please.
Madam Chair. Commissioner, there's a process in statute for forcible entry and detainer, and there is an expedited process. So there's
Okay.
a statutory timeframe and an expedited process where the court has to give preference to those cases so that they can move forward and gain removal of the tenancy on the property.
Commissioner Barrett?
Chair Heiberger, I must say, I agree with you as far as 13 acres is a lot of ground and if there's buildings on there, it could easily be worth considerably more than 150,000. Is it a farmable acreage?
No, Commissioner Barth, I wouldn't characterize it as farmable. There are other outside buildings on it, and like I said, there's an older, there was a house, an existing story-and-a-half house on that, and they moved a two-story house from someplace else. They pulled a permit for the foundation, but not to move that house on there, and it's been connected with a breezeway since then. So there's been construction going on. It was unpermitted construction as well. There's other personal property that apparently is on that on the lot itself.
Does it look like unlicensed vehicles and boats? That's the question.
The state's attorney, the minimum bid just makes sure that we're reimbursed for the amount of money that is owed to the county, and it gives the auditor flexibility that if the property sells it, he's not sitting there saying, I can't sell it because we're $1 short or whatever. So, Commissioner Karski.
Comment on a question. First of all, 4 years of back taxes. I mean, we as a society expect people to pay property taxes. That's why I'm in favor of taking this action. I mean, it could be cleaned up real easily, easier than moving vehicles. My question is, and I know this gets a little muddy, but this is not a clean title when it goes through this auction process, correct?
No, there are some liens against it by private folks, but the county's lien for the back taxes takes it's eminent in all that. So our standing is number one. So I believe there was a mortgage. There was also a vehicle that was unpaid for that was liened against the property, and whoever buys the property will have to do the quiet title action, and that would be to basically transfer those liens to the name of the former owner of the property.
There's a lot of messes behind it.
It's messy. They always are.
It's not just a clean, quick 13 acres. We're still on the motion for minimum bid.
I make the motion to approve the minimum bid at $15,065.77.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it with a question, and I might
Second
have
with
to
a question
rescind
for
my
Commissioner
second.
Barth.
Does that include the $200 for the?
Yes.
Okay, second.
Commissioner Benega, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm having trouble with this one. And frankly, I'll just be very blunt. In my other position, I've had conversations with families who've had similar issues to deal with. And I have a real problem selling and kicking somebody out of the house that they're living in for 10% of the value of the house when we don't know anything about their medical conditions, their mental health, frankly, their whole process of what they're going through in their life, whether it's dementia-related issues or medical issues of another kind. It doesn't seem like we're solving a problem. All we're doing is kicking somebody out of their house that has, frankly, been accustomed to that, and to, frankly, do that for $15,000 doesn't set well with me.
Commissioner Benega, I understand what you're saying. There's been instances in the past where people have had conditions or situations in the county, and I brought it forward to this commission, and the commission has decided, due to their age, due to the medical condition of one of the people living in there, that we would just they stay in the house, and then when the property finally comes up for sale, that the county would collect that. And they did not qualify for any of that. This time here, it would be age, disability, medical conditions, things like that. So yes, we have done that in the past. They've brought nothing forward here, and it's been over a year, Commissioner. And the last time they sent the deputies out with the 3-day notice, they said, we're not leaving. But then the next day, we got a phone call saying that the payment would be made. I would also say that the parents in this case have washed their hands of the matter, I believe, as far as owning the title, and they've passed it on to a younger member of the family, who I don't think is going to qualify for some of these things that we would look at. And if they did have that, if they'd brought it forward, we'd certainly engage them in conversation, because I don't like removing people from their property as well. And Commissioner Heiberger, you've expressed that as well going into the winter here, but they've had adequate time to bring forward some kind of a case. They've just been unreachable to talk to. I've made several attempts to contact these people and find out what's going on up there. They've been a little bit strange when the appraisal boards have gone up there. I don't know if they're anti-government type folks or what's going on there, but I'm in my opinion here, a humble opinion, it's time for the county to move on this.
Do you know if there's any other building eligibilities on that 13 acres?
I do not know that. I would tend to doubt it, because it's the 10 acres and then looking at what's surrounding that, but it's possible. I would have to check with planning.
If they would sell off 2 or 3 of those acres, just even as farmland, they could pay the taxes. Commissioner Karski?
If this land were to sell for, say, $175,000, the county gets their tax money, and the other liens are then satisfied, or the balance goes to the property owner?
No, what happens in this case here is those liens, the county has a standing in there that takes precedence over everything else. We would, if we get those funds, and when that check is written, and there's a little process for, you have a certain amount of time, if it's a certain amount of money over, the county, the treasurer gets the check, and then the auditor's office actually breaks that out into the different taxing entities. So the county doesn't get to keep all of that amount that you're talking about. We distribute it like we normally do according to the formulas.
But the owner doesn't get the remaining part back after all the liens are paid. They don't get that money back.
No, they're done with the property. We already own the property. The county owns the property at this time.
That's true. Commissioner Barth?
I have a memory of a property similar to this in Sioux Falls, where as at the very last second, the family came forward and paid it for their elderly family member that apparently was incapable of reading their mail or writing a check.
Happened in Brandon one time too, where at the last minute somebody paid the property taxes.
But we have to go ahead and hold this hard against them and get this done. And if it means they're evicted and stuff, I guess that's what they chose. Cindy is right that they could sell a couple of acres, even without an eligibility. You could sell
Yeah,
2
2
acres and
acres.
get $15,000.
Additional comments, Commissioner Benega?
There's a lot of assumptions in those comments. First of all, you're trying to tell me that they know exactly what they're doing, which I'm not sure that you can prove in any circumstance without some sort of medical conversation. Secondly, I've been in many homes in this community for services that we've provided as an organization where I would not live in those homes, but that is the choice they've made because they frankly are comfortable with that, including all the things that you hear about. And I can give you a list of those. It's not just a one-time occurrence. So I really have a problem with, frankly, again, doing the same thing I already said, asking someone to leave for 10% of the value of their house. Maybe they are difficult to deal with, but there's got to be a better option than just kicking them out and saying, you're no longer our problem, because guess what? They're going to be our problem down the road in another location. And I know you go through the process and all that kind of stuff, but there's no certification, if you will, of what you're having to deal with or we're dealing with. So that 10% thing is what I'm having a big hurdle to overcome.
Well, Commissioner Benega, the 10% is the very minimum, and I
understand.
Honestly, I'd come back and ask you if that's all I got, if we could hold it over till the next year to see if circumstances change and that price would go up. I tend to agree with Commissioner Heiberger. I think that the price of this property is going to go a lot higher than $115,000.
Excuse me. I agree with you, but then why don't we set the minimum at the appraised value rather than the tax lien value?
Well, that's in state statute, I believe, and I'm not sure that I have that ability to do that, to change those. I'd have to investigate that, or I'd ask the state's attorney's office to investigate that. I don't know the answer to that.
That is a state statute that we have to do it for
I believe we are following state statute in all these here.
Commissioner Karski?
I think that's my question. I mean, if we don't do something, do we lose our ability to do something in the future?
No, the county actually owns this property at this point. We did we took it last year as tax deed, and I made the judgment call to leave these folks sit on here for another year and another winter due to the concerns that we're talking about, and we've heard nothing.
So we already own this property.
We own the property.
And we've let them live there for a year.
Rent-free.
They haven't paid us rent.
Nope. They did maintain the property. I mean, I did drive by there this summer, and it looked like it was mowed and some things like that. So, I mean, there's minimum maintenance been done, so it's not totally objectionable.
Any other comments? I have a motion and a second to set the minimum bid at $15,000. Are we ready to vote? Okay. A roll call vote?
Benega?
No.
Karski?
Yes.
Bender?
Yes.
Barth?
Aye.
Heiberger?
Aye. Motion passes 4-1. And then lastly, we have a motion to authorize the county auditor to publish notice of public auction to be held on Saturday, September 29th, 2018 at 10 o'clock. And my question right off the bat would be, can we change the date?
Well,
Or is this when it is?
You know, what we run into here is with the tax situation, getting that money and redistributing it to the various taxing entities. We could, but it's going to take another year then to redistribute the monies that we might get from a sale like this.
That was my thought, is that, did we want to add a year? Olivia's got a comment. I think she's looking at me stressed.
I was just going to mention that we also usually try to set it for the last Saturday in September because of the process. So like if somebody were to buy this on that Saturday, then it would transfer in time for the next, I'm not sure of the proper term, but in November is when they check on
Oh, yeah,
property
assessments.
Certified.
Yeah.
assessments. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons we do that.
So I'm just throwing it out of there in light of all the conversation we've had. If you wanted to set that for 2018 or 2019, I'm just throwing it out there for conversation purposes, and that was my question to him. Is there anything else that's selling on that day? This is the only thing that.
This is the only thing,
that's
due
setting,
to
so-
due to the appraisal of under $500 for the Del Rapids property.
Right, so. So conversation or a motion?
Question. If they did, since we already own the property, if they did, somebody did come forward and pay the taxes, does the property revert back to them then?
They could work out a deal, a private deal with somebody to come in and pay the taxes, and then you would have to approve it since we've already taken the property.
Okay, so it'd
But
have to
yes,
come back to us.
they could do that. They certainly could get somebody else to pay it on their behalf.
And your question, if I'm following you, Commissioner Heiberger, is do we want to leave the date at September 20?
29th, 2018, or did you want to give it a year?
Ah, interesting, okay.
And to put the date at September 29th at 10 a.m.
What year?
this year, sorry.
2018. Is there a second to that motion? Motion dies for a lack of a second. Additional conversation.
I'm still, I guess, mulling over your option of giving it another year. Intriguing thought, I guess, so that's kind of why I didn't.
Since I'm
propose a
0 for
second.
4, I'll make a motion to set the notice of public auction to be held on September 29th, 2019.
It has to be on a
I think it has to
Saturday,
be on
so
a
is
Saturday,
that
so the
the
date
right
I
would
don't
be
know what
wrong.
that date is. 28th, sorry.
Okay.
28, is there a second to September 28th, 2019, which is also a Saturday?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Was there comments on that? The reason I suggested it was just in light of the conversation that we had after we did the roll call vote about selling it on public auction, and some of the comments that were made, I just was throwing out the option of did we want to give it one more year? They're still gonna have to pay, and then the date's set.
It's not costing us anything, and land values definitely, or shouldn't go down based on history, and it gives them the option, as Commissioner Benega has said, either to prove some sort of hardship or to make it right.
Madam Chair?
Right.
You know, if we evict the resident and let it go through the winter without anyone living there, clearly things will deteriorate, and pretty soon it'll be,
We wouldn't have to evict until next year.
and then would they owe us $19,000
Yep, they would.
instead?
Yep, it's gonna go up. Commissioner Bennett?
I have a question for Auditor Litz. So if we take this action, can you explain to us what kind of communication you would have with these folks to try to help them understand the situation? And do you guys send certified letters? What kind of communication do you have?
Throughout the process, every year when their taxes come due, they're given notice. And then after the fourth year, going into the fifth year, there's a process of notification as well that the counties, their right of redemption period is running out 60 days before a certain date, whenever the state's attorney's office comes forward with that. So they receive a lot of notice that things are happening concerning the property and the taxes due on it. And then last year, they were given notice that they had the final shot at doing this with the commission, but that the commission would also work with them if they paid the taxes after this point, because it was evident that they were not going to pay at that point. The eviction, the 3-day eviction process or notice of eviction was given to them, it's been over a month now. They've received a lot of notices, and we've received nothing in response back.
Commissioner Karski?
If the notices are going to somebody that doesn't have the ability to comprehend or understand them, I mean, what about the former owner? I mean, are we reaching out to anybody else that could?
The former owners were the parents of the
Yeah.
person that's living on there right now.
I know, but are we trying, I mean, do we have a legal responsibility? I mean, there's an ethical or moral responsibility probably for us to do something, but, I mean, if somebody gets a letter that can't read, what good does it do?
Commissioner Karski, I just fail to see how these folks couldn't possibly know what's going on up there. I mean, unless Commissioner Benning is right, they've had ample notice and been served and they've been talked to. I don't know what more to do.
Don't we have proof that they had notice at least of the
Oh, yes,
eviction? Because
yes.
they did
I can get
contact
on-
and they did understand that and say that they were
They've
gonna.
been served. No,
But didn't they contact you and say they were gonna come in and pay, and that's,
They contacted the state's attorney's office, Judy Werkamp, at the beginning of last month. And
so we do at least know that they got that notice
Oh,
and
they
that
were
they
served.
understood it. And
They were served, personally served by a deputy.
I don't want to argue with you, but I can tell you, assuming this hardly ever happens in this community is totally inaccurate, because frankly, we see that at my office weekly.
Well, obviously, I'm moving ahead with the way I've done things before, and I believe strongly that they understand what's going on, especially David. David was the father and then the son. I think they understand what's going on. Whatever you guys want to do, it's your call. I'm just here doing what I normally do. And I'm not going to argue. I believe what I believe, and if you folks want to give them an option, that's fine with me.
Well, I need to qualify saying that I don't know these people personally, don't have any clue who they are, but I can tell you that it's not just a single transaction that happens annually.
We have a motion and a second to do it on Saturday, September 28th, 2019 at 10 o'clock. I'm wondering if we have to have anything to go along with that or following that about the eviction notice, because we don't want to kick them out tomorrow, and I don't want to leave Joe hanging here thinking, what am I supposed to do now? So if this one passes, which I'm presuming if it does, if it passes, then do we need another motion to follow this for the eviction?
No, I can address that. No, they've been served with a notice that it was going to happen, but we've not, what did you call that, where you enter the forcible entry?
Yeah, notice to quit is the document where you're giving notice of either, by statute, the tenant either has 3 days or up to 30 days, depending upon the circumstances. And Ms. Wehrkamp is the person I think that's been working with Bob on this, but I believe that what you've indicated is it was a 3-day notice to quit, which is likely authorized under a specific section of statute. And so I guess, the forcible entry and detainer, in order for that to be initiated, would be a totally separate matter, which I think Bob had discussions about. Whether, I don't think this board needs to take any action on, whether or not a forcible entry and detainer is initiated at this point.
Well, I was going to wait until after this meeting to go forward or sit on this here. I sensed some, opposition to the direction this whole thing was going. So they could sit another year if you want. That's up to you guys.
Are we ready to vote on it?
I'd like to
Commissioner
make a
Karski.
substitute motion.
Okay.
I want to change the date of sale to be September of this year, September 29th, going back to the original date.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second for a substitute motion to go back to the original date. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
So the substitute motion fails, so we're still at September 28th, Saturday, 2019. Can we vote on that one? And then we will make a talk about,
Take public comment.
did you have, pardon me? There's somebody back here. I guess we're going to have a public comment. Excuse me, John.
John Cunningham, 4904 South Oxbow, Sioux Falls. The deferral raises a question about the minimum bid. You'll have another year's taxes and interest and that you might want to amend that for that. Secondly, can the county be reimbursed for all of the costs, the appraisal and so forth? And if so, should that be included in the minimum bids? And that's more of a legal question than that, but raises that question.
Thank you, John. We'll go back to the motion that we're on at this point. If there's no more comments, I do a roll call vote on September 28th, Saturday, 2019 at 10 o'clock.
Barth,
No.
Bender,
yes.
Benega,
No.
Are you sure that's the way you want to go? Oh,
I want to make sure I heard the thing right.
this is Saturday,
2019 or 2008?
19.
Oh, I'm sorry, I heard it wrong.
Yep.
Yes, I apologize.
Yep, so,
Karski,
Yes.
Hiberger.
yes, motion passes 4-1 to set the public auction on September 28th, 2019. My next concern still would be the eviction is
My
to
apology.
make sure that we're not evicting in the
No.
next week. I don't want to stick my sheriffs in danger, and if we've set this back a year. So we do not have to have a motion to hold off on this?
I just don't go forward with it.
Okay. All right. we'll move.
If I
Commissioner
could,
Karski?
just a question.
Mary Zeeb, has brought up a point here that there won't be any taxes added to that next year because the county does own it, so.
Okay.
Okay.
When would you proceed with eviction? I guess I don't want to wait till September 15th of next year, but I would like to see something happen maybe early summer.
That's, this is outside of the normal range of things that I do, so I'd have to consult with the state's attorneys, and it's up to you guys, really. I mean, I'm just out here doing a job, frankly.
My question, Bob, would be how long does the process take to get that, the moving, the eviction, all the things published? Is that a 60-day issue, or is that, Mr.
I'm not
Lieutenant
sure.
Bossman, I think, has a,
That would be great. He looked like he was going to jump out of his chair. I thought, he's the next person I got
he
to call.
wasn't reaching for his gun, so that's a good
Joe
thing.
Bosman, the Sheriff's Office. So we're talking about a special order of eviction or a lockout. This is something we do quite frequently at the Sheriff's Office. There is a process. You got to get it's a signed court order by a judge authorizing the sheriff to enter the residence and remove all occupants of the residence. So give yourself enough time to make sure that court date is set up. The judge can sign it. Once that order has been signed, we then will try to work with the homeowners and give them notice saying, we are coming on this day. Please get as much stuff out as you can. We get to that day, we show up, it's time for you to go. Anything that's left in the house, if it's over a certain dollar amount, I think it's either $500 or $1,000, which isn't a whole lot to hit that threshold, has to be secured by the evictor for up to 30 days for them to come and get it. Now, it doesn't have to be secured there. It can be secured in offsite storage, whatever it could be, but that's going to, depending on how much stuff, that residence may be the best place to store that securely for them to redeem it, for within the next 30 days. So if we start counting backwards in the calendar days, I would assume early summer would be a good time to make sure their ducks are in a row if we're going to hit that September 2019 sale date.
Joe, this maybe is out of your pay grade, but would you recommend that we make a motion about that, or we just leave that open for you to decide with the courts and the auditor's office?
I think that working should be able just to flow on its own without any sort of action from here.
Madam Chair, the commission has to give authority for that litigation by statute to be initiated. And I think you've seen other circumstances under which the commission authorizes the county to enter into litigation of that nature. And so I think that would all be brought by separate,
Okay. It'll be brought as an
motion.
agenda item later.
And I think the auditor has indicated that, that his intention would have been to bring that later anyway. The other thing that should be brought up, since Lieutenant Bosman brought up the property process, if the, either the homeowner or the tenant does not then pick up their property if it is in value of over $500 and it's left there after 30 days, then it's deemed abandoned.
Okay.
So then it's the county's problem again.
Commissioner Karski.
It surprised me that we're not able to go back and collect another year's taxes. We're not even getting rent on this. But then the question becomes, it's our property, somebody's living there. What if somebody gets hurt?
Liability.
Other things to think about too is we've had, sometimes when people have been served notice that they're going to get evicted, they tend to not really care about the property so much or what happens to it. Maybe the upkeep diminishes or they start damaging property as a form of retaliation of the ensuing eviction. So hopefully that has not happened if, I'm not sure what the property looks like, but
They could set a match to it before,
the
the day
longer you
before
wait,
get there.
the roll the dice, and that's kind of what it kind of goes with. But it also gives you time to hopefully work with them if you have questions about their understanding of the process.
Thank
So,
you.
things to think about.
Madam Chair, going back to what Commissioner Karski just said, the tenant falls off the roof and breaks his back. it's now our liability. And they will belong to us forever. While I agree with Gerald that, we may have, illiterate or ignorant or people with like a 3-year-old's mentality living there and they don't comprehend that, there are many people, tens of thousands of people that are paying their taxes on a regular basis who may not be able to read, who may actually depend on their families to pay the bills because they don't understand what's going on. I think that we have deferred this from the proper solution, and that exposing ourselves to grave liability and certainly loss of potential cash for our county. I mean, there are 180,000 people that have been stiffed for these thousands of dollars, and I think we should try to get those thousands of dollars.
Thank you. We have completely talked this through and made all of our motions, and unless you have another comment, we're going to move on to the next agenda item.
It's your choice.
Because
Can we
Reconsider.
Well, it would take someone who voted the other way to reconsider, I believe.
Commissioner Benega.
The only comment I would make is that we have $50 million in liens that we have not collected, so to pick apart something that's $15,000 in taxes is a ridiculous comparison as far as I'm concerned. So I think we move forward. We have the responsibility of completing this now. We've decided that it's going to happen. I wasn't aware of the fact that there's no additional taxes that are accrued for another year, but the cost of the taxpayers having to, frankly, relocate this individual are pretty high, that we're going to have to find some sort of alternative housing for that particular person somehow. It could be an issue where we do have some depreciated project that we're going to have in a year, but that's a small chance compared to, frankly, what I think is an ethical and a moral responsibility.
Okay, we're going to.
One other thing comes to my mind. So, Commissioner Benega, you're concerned about the welfare of these people. And, is there some suggestion? I mean, I'm not a social worker, but I'd be glad to initiate some sort of, or advance an idea of going to investigate these people. And should I be talking to Human Services?
Wellness check?
Wellness check, what? I mean, frankly, I think they're not going to pay. I mean, whether they're capable or not, I don't know that, but I think it's more attitude than its ability.
Thank you. Commissioner Benega.
If you would like, I'll give you a list of people you can contact that can be very helpful to you in this process, and let them take that responsibility as a professional social worker and someone to evaluate their mental health.
Quick question.
Commissioner Karski.
Bob, if you would, keep us informed if this does get paid. Let us know.
Oh, absolutely.
Please.
Yeah. And I was hoping he'd come in and pay it, over Labor Day weekend, and I'd have a nice surprise here, and we'd be able to take care of that or ask for you to restore it, but that's not been the case. So.
All right, thank you, Bob. We'll move on to item number 13 is consider request from the sheriffs to authorize the early hire of the deputy sheriff's position authorized for fiscal year 2019. This should be easy compared to our last
think
couple.
so. Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Joe Bosman with the Sheriff's Office. What I have before you this morning is request for authorization due to 2 deputy sheriff positions that were authorized and slated in the 2019 budget. One of them is a new position, deputy sheriff, as a result of the increased revenue and contract hours from the city of Hartford for patrol services. And the other is a reclassification of a non-civil certified civil process position to that of a deputy sheriff. The reason for the request now to kind of get the ball rolling is twofold. Our group of applicants and those in the waiting list from our most recent deputy sheriff testing process are highly being sought after by other agencies, and we would like to try to secure them with our agency if possible, which we can't offer them the position until we can try to get them a little sooner than possible. The second thing to think about is the law enforcement basic certification course in Pier, which they will need to attend, only runs 3 times a year. The next course starts in November of this year. We would like to get them in that course, because if not, the next opening would be in March of 2019. However, then Hartford will be doing increased contract hours starting January 1st. So any help getting these 2 applicants up and running would be much appreciated. The cost for these 2 positions to start early, we would look for 2 pay periods into the 2018 budget, would have a total cost of just under $6,000. We would anticipate absorbing that in our current 2018 Sheriff's Office budget. We will identify some savings if we can places to cover that cost for the 2 authorized early hires.
Questions for Joe? Otherwise, a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
And next, we have a briefing on the 2019 budget means of finance. I have a question. Do we have the public hearing next week, or did we do that?
That's what this is right now.
Oh, so this is a public
Yes.
hearing. This is a public hearing on the 2019 budget, which I think we should have noticed that as a public hearing.
We do, because we did, previously we had the press release that went out. And and it was brought forward as part of the provisional.
It went forward as,
Part of the provisional was
Okay.
noticed then.
Okay.
Commissioners, Carol Muller, Commission Office, Commission Staff, and before you today is the FY 19. I see that I put a typo in there wrong in my memo. The FY 19 provisional budget stands at $86,873,328. This includes a 2.934% growth in property taxes due to new construction within the county and a 2.1% CPI adjustment allowed by the property tax limitations and statutes for total county properties collected. In here, we have 7 new positions to begin January 2019, and for the last quarter of the year, we have another post that would be added to the jail, and a post represents 6 correctional officers. So, in accordance with the joint power agreements with the City of Sioux Falls, the 2019 budgets for Metro Communications, i.e. 911, Siouxland Heritage Museums and Siouxland Libraries will be approved on September 5th, 2018. That is tomorrow afternoon. And we are not anticipating any changes that could come forward from the general fund budget associated with those agreements. Now, attached to the document that you have today, there are some things that have changed since you last saw the budget, and we want to update you on those 3 things that we know. One is that we have an adjustment due to a decrease in anticipated centrally assessed utilities. Those come across to the auditor's office probably, I think, on Thursday, so they worked furiously to get this together. There was a decrease. There was a reduction in the Air Guard contract resulting from personnel changes, so that's a net because both did the decrease revenues and expenses. And then we updated payroll projection reflecting all personnel actions through last Tuesday. And those changes resulted in a $44,251 net increase to the general fund cash applied. You also, last week, had some discussion as you moved into this, and I wanted to provide some input on what we were able to research for you. Facilities vehicles, Kim, Mark Krinz, Facilities Director, and myself sat down and looked through some different things. Mark has done a great job with his budget, and in looking at the facilities, he feels that he can get that out of this year's budget, out of potential savings. The Board of Prisoners, Finance Officer Kim Adamson had conversation with the Warden and Chief Deputy. They recommended the budgeted revenue remains unchanged. Salvage revenue, the review of those historical numbers reflect that those are cyclical revenue, which is difficult to budget. The provisional budget does include $40,000 already for this revenue source. So with that, I would open it up for your discussion. Just as a reminder, because you know I'm big on reminding you about all your dates, you do not meet next week. September 18th will be your next commission meeting, and September 25th is when you're required by statute to pass the final budget.
Thanks, Carol. Any comments? I would remind you of the conversation last week of the 3 positions that I think that we should consider putting in this budget. We did find an extra $44,000, which would bring that down to about an additional $100,000 of cash applied. That's just what you said, wasn't it, that you
No,
found
we-
44,000 to add to the general fund?
No, those all increase our cash applied.
Oh, they increased the cash
Yes,
applied.
yes.
44,000.
Typically, at this time of year, we typically see a little bit more salary savings. This year, we aren't seeing those salary savings coming across.
Okay.
So unfortunately, that takes us 44,000 deeper.
I would still remind the commission to please think about in the next 2 weeks, those positions that I brought forward last week. This is a public hearing. It was noticed back in July, and so if there's anyone who would like to have a comment on the budget, this is your opportunity to comment on the budget. I'm seeing no one moving. So with that, it was a briefing, and if there's no questions for Carol, we will move on to the next, which is item number 15, Minnehaha County Commission Liaison Reports. Are there any reports? Okay, I spoke at one of the North Rotary Group this last week, and there was a lot of very good questions. One of them was, does the county still have financial troubles? Because we're not hearing it in the news lately, which I thought was interesting. And another one, I got an education afterwards, was a couple questions about liquor licenses, which I had to call Olivia and get a little catch-up on what I didn't understand about liquor licenses. And so liquor license, malt beverage licenses, and wine licenses, that there are no more liquor licenses available in rural Minnehaha County at this point. And then we talked a little bit about the different costs and where that money goes when they are sold. The next opportunity for more liquor licenses would be after the 2020 census, if things change. Otherwise, all we have now is malt and wine liquor, or malt and wine licenses that are available for sale in the rural county. So, it was a good meeting. Item number 16 is new business. Is there any new business?
I missed the liaison because
Oh, I'm sorry.
reading and not paying attention, I'm sorry. But I just wanted to say, and I suggested this morning, is I'd been contacted by the mayor to be part of the Metro management conversation about a backup facility or a new facility attached, if possible, to a training center that the fire department and the sheriff's department, not the sheriff's, the fire department and the police department are working on, and is in the mayor's CIP budget for future consideration by the city council. But that conversation will be had in the next few months, and I'm happy to serve to do that.
Okay, then is there any new business? Is there any old business? For a motion to recess the county commission meeting, and we will reconvene in a few minutes for an executive session. So is there a motion to recess?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. We are recessed. Let's try for 10 minutes or less.